Hi, I'm Peter from Coffee Parts and I'm here with Damien Moore from Marzocco Australia to look at a super rare GS. Before we start looking at the GS, Damien, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
We've known each other for a long time, give or take 15 years.
Yeah.
And you've known my dad for maybe 20.
Yeah.
So it's been a
long journey. We've been almost neighbours.
Yeah,
in fact.
literally hundreds of meters apart.
That's right. It's been amazing the last 20 years watching Coffee Parts grow and Marzocco grow and being along for the ride. It's just been a wonderful thing, hasn't it?
And it's been fun. All the events and I don't know, just walking by the beach, it's been cool.
Yeah. Seeing you with all the old guys drinking coffee.
Now, this GS, it's something special to Marzocco.
It is. This is like a fundamental DNA for modern machines that was created 50 plus years ago. But even looking at it now, you can sort of see the modern machine. It doesn't look that different to what we see now. This was a real step forward at the time in coffee machines.
So this machine came out in 1970. Mm-hmm. I think they did a production run of about 22 to 2,400 machines all up. It's a bit vague, but it's in that vicinity in 1, 2, 3, and 4 group machines.
Yep.
And the later ones had solenoids. They didn't at this stage.
There were so many different models in the GS range in that from 1970 right through GS and then GS2 up to late 80s. There was a few different models, with manual paddles and solenoid activated groups. And it was sort of the precursor to volumetric machines, but that happened in the GS models, that idea of controlling the amount of water that would go through. This model here is more of a time-based machine, so it'd be water over time for espresso making. But it is fundamentally that GS, that gruppo saturo saturated group system, which really is the backbone of all Marzocco equipment.
So this led to the GS3, which is the current kind of home commercial one group
like
machine.
Prosumer.
But GS, gruppo saturo.
Gruppo saturo, yeah.
I'm getting there. Basically, do you want to explain what that meant and why it was special to this machine?
Absolutely. Like gruppo saturo or saturated group system is what they did is take the two basic missions of a coffee machine, which was to make water for coffee and water for steam, and gave each of those a different boiler. So they could be operating independently of each other, and that changing a temperature of one or having water going into one would not affect the other. And so that became more and more important with espresso as we sort of realized that temperature stability was key to be able to produce a really great coffee every shot. And so splitting the two boilers and having a big mass of water in that brew boiler, that saturated group, means that your pressures are going to be consistent. And the more water that you have in a boiler, the more sort of resistant to any change. A little bit of water goes in, might drop the temperature only a tiny bit. A big boiler, that doesn't really happen in that. And so you get that stability that we were looking for and is now just absolutely required in a coffee machine.
So Marzocco had pioneered the horizontal boiler in a machine.
Yep.
But in this machine, it's the first machine where they split to the twin boiler.
Yeah, this is the first sort of, I don't know if it's the first one they split the boilers, but they definitely gave the espresso machine, the espresso boiler, its own complete boiler, filled it up. There's no air in it. It's just a solid amount of water moving through. For every drop that falls out, there's a drop that moves in. That system is really, really special, yeah.
And on this particular machine, when you walked in today and you saw, and it's something that we had Eric from Marzocco the other day too, the sticker behind this machine means a lot.
There's such a cool story behind that sticker. Like on the front of it, it's a testament to the small company and the family mindedness of Marzocco at this time. And the sticker on the front of this machine, it just has the local phone number for the local Florentine area. And that was the sort of mindset. They wanted to sell machines to their local people who they were making machines for.
Yeah.
The idea that this would become an international company, you can see it. It's not there. That wasn't the end goal. It was just to make a
area code or just
it's just a phone number.
And it was actually their home phone.
That's right. And apparently, this is a story I heard from one of the other guys. If you used to ring that number, you would get through to the kitchen of Piero's family house and talk to Giovanna Bambi, who may or may not put you through to her. If she was busy making some food, maybe she'd be like, oh, he's busy. But yeah, no, that's again that I remember hearing these stories when I started with La Marzocco, and I thought this is a really lovely company. These are the backbone of the stories that keeps La Marzocco together and feeling like a family.
And actually talking about the house and the original factory, which is now the Academia.
Yeah.
We visited it actually both together. I remember there, maybe I can't remember what year,
it was a while ago.
2015 or something like that. But that's now the Academia. But when you drive out there, it's not a factory in the middle of factory, it's a factory in the middle of pasture.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, so they moved, there was a few different things that created the move of the factory up to the hills just outside Florence, that original factory, which is now the Academia. One of the big reasons for that factory to be built there, it was quite near the cemetery where Piero Bambi's brother, who died quite young in his life, was buried. And the Bambi family wanted to be able to visit their son's grave without it being too much of a stress on the mum. So they built the factory and the workplace quite close so that they could walk to that grave and pay their respects as they wanted to. And in fact, now Piero Bambi, who passed away a couple of years ago now, he's also there. So if you go to the Academia, it's just a really quick walk to that same situation. So again, it's that family.
Piero Bambi gave name to the PB machine.
Yeah.
But this machine has on the sticker FB.
Yes, so FB, so Fraternity Bambi, or the Brothers Bambi, or the Family Bambi. That's been... Piero is the son and the nephew of the two founders of the company. And that FB, or Fraternity Bambi, has been synonymous, especially around that Florence area, for what they do, making coffee machines.
And obviously they dedicated the FB70.
Yeah, so in our time, we've seen the FB70 come out, the FB80, more recently the FB90. They're usually a celebration machine every 10 years or so. And we're coming up to our 95th birthday, so I'm really excited to see what they decide to do for the F100. Yeah. I can't even imagine. It should be cool.
I always like the FB70 body. We've actually got a machine that we pulled apart. We've got a body downstairs. This is an artwork.
I love the FB70 body. That's a real 70s kind of vibe as well. I mean, it was built in the 90s, but it really harks back to that fat 70s look. But there's not much more 70s than this, is there? Like, you've got the Mission Brown panels, the orange side pieces.
So if you actually look at these panels, that's still the same shape as the GS3
yes,
now.
That's right. The side panels of the GS3 are exactly the same.
And La Marzocco have done a tribute to this and made some of these panels for the GS3 as a retro kit.
Just recently, in the last year or so, I saw some people doing that. I think there's a lot of love for this machine out there. There's a lot of people who are probably in their retirement age now, but they started their career on a machine like this because it gave them the tools to continually make good coffee.
And even if you look at today, like, this arm is no longer original, but the position of the arm is still very similar to the GS3 of today. The position, this was a knob, now it's a lever on the GS3, but they've really kept it to tradition. Obviously improved some of the workflow and some of the tech. I mean, this didn't have IoT. But the newer machines today do give honor to the machines that were.
Definitely. I think anything that has the GS on it, and that's a part of the story of Marzocco, is, paying tribute to the people before you. And the GS range, I think, will always look a bit like this. That sloped panel at the front here, the exposed group heads. The GS2 is interesting because it didn't have these exposed group heads. It had a covered group head, and you can kind of see how that evolved into the Linear Classic. But I always quite like these exposed group heads on the GS and the GS3.
Well, part of the La Marzocco DNA is the machine's never finished. So that kind of explains the journey, that it's just a continual improvement, like how it's just an evolution.
Yeah, I agree. The technology that is in one usually makes it to another and then another. And if it's a good, I've said this for years, if it's a good idea, doesn't matter where it comes from, they'll try and incorporate it and keep using it if it's a good idea. And baristas come up with some great ideas sometimes. They tell us some stuff and you're like, that's really clever. We will try and work with that and see what we can do.
Going off track and going back to the factory, or the Academia now in Florence, at the time I was last there, it was still a factory, it was still working. And one thing I noticed was, as we walked around, everyone was so relaxed, so chill. Maybe because it was in the countryside, they had a big emphasis on food, the pizza oven, the chef there. There's something that doesn't, walking to other factories felt like production line.
Yeah, like I totally agree. I've been there. I've been working with Marzocco either directly for La Marzocco or for another company that was representing La Marzocco. So I've been lucky enough to visit the factory a few times. And I remember the first time I went, I was on the factory floor just talking to a technician, and a little red light siren went off and the whole factory floor stopped.
Lunchtime.
Had a coffee.
Yeah.
It was coffee time. It was like a 2-minute break for a quick espresso. They all lined up behind the machine, had the espresso. And then when lunch came around, there's a big pasta table.
Yeah.
And it was like sitting down with your family for lunch. And coming from a really Western kind of background of work, that was like nothing I'd ever come across.
I remember when we were there and they had the pizza oven going, and we were all sitting there. And
that is such a classic Italian kind of thing, isn't it? That's why I still keep working for this company. That's why I think this company actually is succeeding.
Yeah.
Because of those values
haven't changed.
Yeah, that's right. It's the same people at the top.
Yeah.
And the people who've respected that kind of culture do well in La Marzocco.
I do like it. And La Marzocco is a brand that you just see huge kind of fanfare for it. I mean, there's people that have La Marzocco's tattooed on
I know.
And I mean, that's a sign of like brand loyalty and love.
That's pretty full on, isn't it? It is, and it's been interesting. Now, seeing how that's just continually improved has been a sense of pride for me to work for this company, and a sense of astonishment. I think the key to that has been listening always to what the market is asking for. We don't always get it right. We put some machines out there, everyone goes, okay. But we're constantly trying to listen and put a new product out there which helps people make good coffee, which I think is really cool. It's a really interesting place to work for sure.
Should we spin this machine around? Because I feel like we've been talking a lot about the machine. People have only seen one side. They're going to resonate with this side.
For
so
sure.
Let's camera magic, flip this machine around and just explain what's happening on the front. So just looking into the machine, most of it's original. Obviously this machine's had a bit of modernization. He's put an autofill box in to get rid of the manual fill here, because at that time you had to keep an eye on your water level and adjust it. He's put a PID controller hidden in there to control the temperature, which is obviously not original anymore. But apart from those two main things, it does look fairly original. And
it does. You can see parts here, as I was saying before, that are fundamental to even to the modern coffee machine, and there hasn't been that much change. You can see the same sort of steam overpressure valve, a vacuum breaker, a water level unit, which we said has been added on. But you can again, the GSs were sort of ready to be modded. And I think there was a real progression at that time. Interesting, you can see these boilers are just bolt-on group heads to a tube boiler. Whereas now the modern machines, that's all welded, and that's a real art.
They were bolt-on even in the linear classics for many years before they became welded.
That's right. I think the welding technology has improved quite a lot in the last 10, 15 years.
To enable them to do some stuff. Is still very, very neat.
Because they would have manufactured this completely themselves. That's what's really cool about these older ones. There's nothing being brought in or manufactured off site. It's all just been manufactured at the factory.
This also had the cup warmer here. We've disconnected it to look into it, but the cup warmer was connected.
These old cup warmers used to be connected to the steam boiler, and then they would basically fizzle a little bit of hot water out amongst the tray to kind of have hot water falling onto the cups.
Actually, I think that's what this knob here is. I can just see this connecting to there.
Or maybe that was to reduce the flow to the cup warmer, maybe. It's pretty interesting. You don't see that often anymore. Now there's an element usually in the cup warmer, if that's required.
So this literally just gave off a mist of steam and
heat. Which I've seen a couple of these on some machines over the years, and I think it's pretty humorous because you water and over the top of an electrical thing. But
what can go wrong?
No, that's right. What else can we see on this one? It's almost like a miniature version of the modern twin boiler system. For me, I can see that the steam boiler on this is quite a bit smaller because milk wasn't as big as a market as it is. You know, this is an espresso machine. And a good story about, you know, La Marzocco when they started being moved in the States is they were finding it hard to sell them as espresso machines until he made it in the cappuccino machine. It's that change in name. Americans went, oh, I like a cappuccino. It's not this European espresso thing.
That was the funny thing. Australia, England, United States had more La Marzoccos than Italy themselves. You know? Definitely. That's changing quite a lot now, but in the first first decade of my career, it was rare to see a Marzocco in Italy. And I think that we have richer markets, and there's nothing quite like the Australian coffee scene. It's extremely robust and really works very hard, and Marzoccos luckily have been taken up really well here. We talked earlier about this machine is hot water over time. Obviously in modern machines now we've got volumetrics and we've got shot timers, but it's interesting to know that you've got the 2 round gaps here. They did have almost what now would look like a oven timer or something.
It just ding.
A ding to dial in your time, which was very cool for that era, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how that's changed. You know, that they were just saying, oh, you run hot water over the coffee for this amount of time, then you'll have a good coffee. And now we know that there's flow rate and temperature and all these kind of things that also are going to affect it. But I think that's probably just as it was riding the technology that it could do at the time. We didn't have that great stability until this machine really came up with that single boiler for coffee. And that really propelled temperature stability and people thinking about it a lot. You know, how can we improve that so every shot is the same?
There's something about this machine I can't explain it.
It's really cool, isn't it?
It's just so cool that for such a vintage machine, I mean, this is over 50 years old. It's still relatively modern. If that makes sense.
It does. It makes sense, this machine. Like looking at it as a modern coffee technician. I think it took you and I a couple of minutes to go, okay, well this is that and that is this.
And even like taking the panels off was just, you know, so quick.
It's really, really groovy. It's interesting the thing there's hot water in the middle on this machine, and you know now we have hot water usually on the side. All these little tiny things.
Only one steam arm. Now we tend to have 2.
Yeah, have 2. All these little things have just been continual improvement, which is definitely what the GS was the beginning of. I think it was this constant, okay, well we can do this, we can do this. And as I said, the GS ended up having quite a few models, even though there's officially just GS 1, 2 and 3. There were manual paddle versions, all kinds of stuff.
And going back to the factory, I just remembered we were talking about the La Marzocco and not only the evolution but the family culture. A lot of the people that are part of the La Marzocco journey, they end up putting a tile on the wall.
That's a really nice thing, isn't it? Like they in their new factory, so not the Academia, they built another factory a little bit further out of town. And in that factory, up on the mezzanine deck where you can have lunch, pretty much all the friends of Marzocco around the world, I know you're there, I'm lucky enough to be there, we have a little tile and it's on the wall, and to me that's a really perfect analogy. It's the people who make the company and the people who make the factory. In the last 2 or 3 years during COVID, the factories had to employ a lot of extra people. They had to do different shifts and struggled through some interesting times. But I still think that's the fundamental hiring mentality, is that these people make the company.
And they're the family.
Yeah, that's certainly what we hear from the bosses when they talk about this sort of stuff. It's certainly every La Marzocco staff member I talk to. They kind of get this nice warm hug.
But
even fans.
But even the La Marzocco in Australia, whether it's Sydney and Melbourne, both your offices, when I'm there, like everyone, it's just actually a cool space to be.
Well, we've been, as I said, we've been friends for a long time, and your coffee journey, our coffie journey, they're right alongside each other. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without yourself. And your father helped teach me some stuff. It's a community, right?
I do feel coffee culture in Australia, now we're moving away from the machine, but coffee culture in Australia, especially 15, 20 years ago, everyone grew together because the culture has grown. Coffee culture really became strong in the last 15 years. And it's just kind of funny to see.
It's interesting.
Everyone, the way they progressed. And
I was lucky enough to work in a cafe 20 years ago, but almost every other person who worked in that cafe either is a roastery owner or a full-on tech, or has done a completely different business in coffee. But you're right, we've all, that period in maybe the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s, there was a bunch of people who were very interested in Australian coffee culture.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see some of us are still here.
Yeah, hopefully here for a long time. But yeah, thank you so much. I've learned so much about this machine and it's been cool to go down memory lane.
It has been cool, hasn't it? It's been so fun to look at this old machine and exactly that, talk about some of our old memories and just connect again, mate.
And I feel like there might be some questions about La Marzocco, about this machine. If there is, hit us up in the comments below. Me or Damien will reply to you. And like always, if this video has brought you value, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you again, and thank you, Damien.
Thanks, man.
You're a legend.